Canada's airports were bustling in April, but fewer passengers were flying to the U.S. It's a sign that efforts by American destinations to win back Canadian tourists may be falling flat. Take a look. The number of passengers at Canadian airports who were screened to travel to the U.S. plunged in April. Transborder traffic to the U.S. saw 1.1 million visitors in April. Now that's down 5.8% from the same period last year. Meantime, domestic passenger traffic in April was up by 7.4% to 2 million compared to April 2024. And CTV's Colton Trail joins us now from Ottawa with more on the story. Colton, great to see you. While governments, of course, work at their levels, Canadians have also stepped up in their retaliation to U.S. tariffs, and it's beginning to hurt businesses on the other side.
They absolutely have, Akshay. I mean, you look at those numbers, for example, even if you compare them to pre-pandemic numbers, we're talking about a 12, almost 13% drop in travel to the U.S., while at the same time, international travel outside of the U.S. has increased 19% since 2019. These are very stark differences, and what you're seeing is that while a large chunk of travelers are still choosing to go places, they are turning away from the U.S. as a result of the political situation, as a result of the worse Canadian dollar, and the combination of those two impacts means you are seeing more people travel overseas to countries that aren't the U.S., but you're also seeing a very significant impact to the Canadian tourism economy as well. The Conference Board of Canada estimates it's about an $8.8 billion boost to the Canadian economy, or 0.2 to 0.3% of a percentage point for the GDP as a whole, which is incredibly valuable, especially at a time where our economy is suffering. And so where we would normally maybe grow 2% in a year and our forecast to grow 1%, the difference between 0.7 and 1 is very significant. And it's also valuable because it's happening in an industry that typically hires younger Canadians. And if you look at the job numbers we've seen, especially for younger Canadians, they have been very, very challenging. And so this is going to go a long way to supporting Canadian industry across this country as a result of so many people choosing to vacation here at home rather than going into the States.
Let's also talk about some measures Canadian airlines are actually taking to sort of keep up with this domestic demand or, some other travel destinations. Colton, what are we learning on that front?
Yeah, you're seeing increased flights to Latin America from a number of different providers. You're seeing increased flights across Canada from Canadian providers as well. There really has been this shift in servicing the Canadian customer that is changing. We've seen more flights, for example, from Ottawa to Paris under French Airlines. We've seen an increase in flights directly from airports like Toronto to major European destinations as well. There has been a shift in where the travel has gone. And if you listen to the earning calls, for example, of some of these companies, Air Canada, WestJet, there is an expectation that this will continue to stutter. Now, the big question in the travel industry is, will this last longer than the summer? It's expected that while the weather is nice, you're going to see a lot of this interprovincial travel. You're going to see overseas travel. But when it becomes warmer, when snowbirds are typically thinking of going to Arizona or Florida or California, are we going to see the return of that kind of travel behavior? It slowed down a little bit last winter, but is it going to last longer? It's a question that these companies are still waiting to answer. It's also a question that could have a major impact on the Canadian economy, because again, there were more studies being done, this one by BDC and the Conference Board of Canada, where they tracked that if the average Canadian spent about $25 a week in Canada rather than on American products, we could again see the GDP increase by 0.7%. And so the longer this goes on, the better it is for our Canadian economy. But obviously, it is having an impact on American partners, and that's why you're seeing so many states and local businesses, tourism boards, economic boards reaching out with those advertising campaigns. The owner that you spoke to earlier today of that golf course reaching out to Canadians, asking them to come back, because even though the air travel is down, as you showed, by about 6% over the month, the man that you spoke to, his region, I was speaking to their Chamber of Commerce, it's down 30%, or that's what they're expecting over the summer. And so locally, we are seeing some really significant hits that are much worse than when you look at it from a national level.